Back in Season 1, it was a huge meme to pick on Armin because, well, he was a wimp. I'm ashamed to say that even I threw around Armin jokes from time to time, but as the series has progressed, without even myself consciously noticing, he became easily my favorite character in the whole series. And today I've tried to encompass why that is, why the trials and emotional growth that Armin has experienced make him not just my favorite character, but an incredible character overall. I think the idea that Armin was a wimp in the first season is slightly exaggerated. If anything, I think that Armin was, or at least started out, as the very opposite. He was branded as a heretic because he wasn't afraid to express his desires to escape the walls, the birdcage that was closing them all in, and simply because he didn't have the physical capacity to defend himself from people who didn't like that idea, he was commonly branded as lame. This idea perpetuated through all of Season 1, with Eren having to save him from that Titan because he didn't contribute much to the Survey Corps at this point in the story. After all, as cadets, what mattered was one simple thing: whether you could kill a Titan, whether you could survive. And that embodies what all of Attack on Titan was at the very beginning, but as the story rapidly began to expand in Season 2 and 3, we likewise saw Armin flourish with the show's growing ideas, which speaks volumes about how deep his character is. Armin has never really been a wimp, but rather an outspoken person who has been pushed into thinking his ideas were worthless. But let's skip to Season 3, where I think that we discover who Armin really is behind the lack of self-confidence and weak frame. Armin never thought his life to be valuable. When Eren saved him from the Titan in Season 1, you could argue that this made Armin realize his value to his friends, but if anything, I think it reaffirmed what he himself believed. Not just that he wasn't yet equal to Eren and Mikasa, but that he had to change himself for the better. He wanted to reach a point where if this situation were to happen again, he could sacrifice himself, feeling like he was worth it, knowing that he'd changed. And we get this chance in Season 3, Part 2, in the battle for Shiganshina. Armin's plan to take down Bertholdt required him to sacrifice his own life to take him down. Armin was indebted to Eren for as long as he could remember, ever since Eren had to rescue him from back alleys, from bullies, and especially ever since Eren sacrificed himself to rescue Armin from the Titan in Season 1. And even if Eren survived that, the action itself had repercussions and thematic purpose. Beating Bertholdt was Armin's moment. It was meant to be, to show that his mind had become a valuable asset, that he could think of this plan, and that he'd grown past the idea that his body was worthless and instead used it as a strength, throwing it away to secure the colossal Titan. But most of all, it was his way to free himself of his debt to Eren. A big part of Armin's personality was his lack of confidence, much of which stemmed from being overshadowed by Eren and Mikasa. It was made clear from the beginning that he wanted to someday think of himself as their equal, and this is where he did it. To repay Eren for saving his life so long ago, he gave his life once again for him. It's a zero-sum game. Armin dies knowing that he has finally become capable of saving his friends instead of it always just being the other way around, is free from their shadows that have kept his self-confidence hidden. But of course, they lose him as a result. They lose someone who has finally come into understanding who he is and his value to everyone in the Survey Corps, until the injection comes into play. And I talked about the reasons Armin was chosen over Erwin a lot in my other video, so check that out if you haven't already, and I won't be laboring too much over the specifics here. But it gave Armin essentially a restart button, to begin anew as a completely independent version of who he once was, but of course there's a cost. We know from Attack on Titan that arguably the biggest cost of all of this is the cost of life, and more specifically as we get further into the show, how this can be caused by one's loss of humanity. Just as Eren began a new era in his life after being brought back from the dead, I guess, after being eaten by the Titan, revealing to himself and everyone that he's a Titan shifter, the same happens to Armin here. He's alive once again, but burdened with so much more, the memories of all those dead holders before him. He can't escape it. His very first memory upon coming back to life, it was Bertholdt crying. It's the fate of a Titan shifter that Reiner forebodes in Season 4. And he's gone from being this character who had no value for his own life to someone who can essentially not die, but is forced to remember the taken lives before him. And he's also left with the guilt, the incredible burden on his shoulders of living up to Erwin's legacy. The self-confidence that he gained by sacrificing himself, by feeling like he was worth it, is almost relinquished by having to live up to the expectations of the colossal titan, of Erwin's replacement. And even though he is himself a new man, someone completely different from Erwin, there's always going to be that part of himself, that part of Armin, who thinks that he's still just his replacement, that he's nothing compared to what Erwin could have been, something that he's always had since he was a child. In essence, what I'm trying to say is that Armin is the embodiment of how no one can really be free. He was tied down by society's criticisms and his own as a child, but escaped that by maturing and finding self-worth in some kind of way. He felt like he wasn't enough, but redeemed himself through the Battle of Shiganshina, and he's finally escaped the walls. He's seen the sea, as has always been his dream, only to be met by enemies across it. It never ends, but Armin also never stops, and that's what's awesome about his character, that he truly never stops trying to improve himself and find a solution to whatever comes his way. He knows better than anyone the lack of self-confidence he has, the feeling that he must always live up to someone else's expectations. And he always pushes on despite that and tries to change himself for the better. So yeah, that's why I love Armin. He's a great character. His role in the series is absolutely invaluable. And in Season 4 and further on, we're seeing how he's actually becoming this kind of rival figure to Eren, this person who was once his friend and his brother almost. Armin will certainly have one of the most pivotal roles in the finale of the series, and I think this is where his story will come full circle. Perhaps he'll finally break free of everything that's shackling him down. Maybe he can finally become free. But, we'll see. As always, this has been the Anime Culture Corner. I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for future in-depth show, manga, and character analyses.